A top NIH official admitted in a Wednesday letter that U.S. taxpayers funded gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses in Wuhan and revealed that EcoHealth Alliance, the U.S. nonprofit that funneled NIH money to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, was not transparent about the work it was doing. Now, shouldn't this be the biggest bombshell in America? That your federal your dollars were funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology to perform gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses. Now remember, the lab leak theory was a conspiracy theory. It was labeled such by all of the elitists in our society. It was labeled as such by social media. You weren't supposed to discuss it. It was very bad. It was anti-Chinese racism to even mention it. And if you mentioned that the NIH, under the auspices of people like Dr. Fauci, was funding gain-of-function research, if you did that, this meant that you were some sort of crazy conspiracy theorist. Well, now the NIH is admitting it. And now gain-of-function research, for those who don't know, is where you take a virus that is not transmittable to humans, and you make it transmissible to humans. This is in sort of the colloquial sense. The very technical sense is where you make a virus that is transmissible more transmissible. So what Fauci had been arguing for a while here is that it is not gain-of-function research to take a bat coronavirus and make it applicable to humans. Okay, that is a distinction without a difference. That is idiotic. Okay, so you'll remember that he had a knockdown, a drag-out fight in the Senate in which he admits that the Chinese could have used money for gain-of-function research.
You gave them money and you said, don't do gain-of-function research.
Correct.
And they said, we won't.
Correct.
And you have no way of knowing whether they did or not except you trust them. Is that right?
Well, we generally always trust the grantee to do what they say, and you look at the results.
Have you ever had a grantee lie to you?
I cannot guarantee that a grantee has not lied to us, because you never know.
You never know. Well, I mean, I think it's a pretty good indicator that you shouldn't be giving money to the Chinese government. In a letter to Representative James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, Lawrence Tabak of the NIH cites a, quote, limited experiment that was conducted to test if, quote, spike proteins from naturally occurring bat coronaviruses circulating in China were capable of binding to the human ACE2 receptor in a mouse model. The lab mice infected with the modified bat virus became sicker than those infected with the unmodified bat virus. That revelation vindicates Rand Paul, who got into heated exchanges with National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease Director Anthony Fauci during his May and July testimonials before Congress over that gain-of-function question. At the second hearing, Paul accused Fauci of misleading Congress by denying the United States had funded gain-of-function projects at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. In keeping with Fauci's refusal to use gain-of-function terminology, Tabak also avoids the term, though the work he describes matches its commonplace definition precisely. A previously unpublished EcoHealth grant proposal filed with the NIAID, obtained by The Intercept, had already exposed that almost $600,000 of the total grant to the Wuhan Institute of Virology was for research designed to make viruses more dangerous and or infectious. Richard Ebright, biosafety expert, professor of chemistry and chemical biology at Rutgers University, had previously rebutted Fauci's claim that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology as, quote, demonstrably false. Ebright told National Review, the NIH-financed work at the WIV epitomizes the definition of gain-of-function research, which deals with enhanced potential pandemic pathogens, or those pathogens resulting from the enhancement of the transmissibility and or virulence of a pathogen. Apparently, Tabak also revealed that EcoHealth failed to comply with its reporting requirements under the grant. EcoHealth was required to submit to a secondary review in the event of certain developments that might increase the danger associated with the research. So, when Wuhan researchers successfully bound a natural bat coronavirus to a human ACE2 receptor in mice, they were supposed to inform the NIH, and then they didn't. Okay, that is a full-scale disaster area for the NIH and for Anthony Fauci, because now you have to ask, okay, so they took a bat coronavirus, they bound it to a human ACE2 receptor. We're supposed to believe that this then naturally occurred in the wild, that it wasn't a lab leak, and that sort of research that we were funding had nothing to do with the death of millions of people around the world. Should give us a different perspective on whether we ought to be doing business with China. Should certainly give us a different perspective on whether the experts ought to be trusted on this stuff when they have been lying to us consistently. You want to talk about the blowout of institutional trust? You have Dr. Anthony Fauci presiding over an agency that was, in fact, funding gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology now, according to these new communications, lying to the American people about it, and then proceeding to take every possible position on every possible issue throughout the pandemic. And then, when people have doubts, they're like, well, I don't know why you don't trust us. You need to trust us. Okay, so Fauci's new push and the push of this administration is to get kids vaccinated. Now, if you think for one solitary second that the push to get kids vaccinated ends with your kids unmasking in school, you're out of your mind. It ain't going to happen. The reason it ain't going to happen is because, as we already know, the virus is still infectious. Even if you are a vaccinated person, the CDC has been urging you to continue to mask up. And Rochelle Walensky said over the weekend that if your kid gets a vaccine, then your kid should continue to mask up in perpetuity, forever. So what exactly is the strong case for kids getting vaccinated? Well, Fauci says we have to stop kids from getting the disease at all. Zero COVID is not a thing, guys. Zero COVID is not a thing. The reason you get vaccinated is so you don't get hospitalized or die. The chances of being hospitalized or dying as a child are lower than your chances of being hospitalized or dying if you're a vaccinated adult, in the vast majority of cases. Here is Dr. Anthony Fauci trying to promote kids getting vaccinated. Again, I'm not saying kids shouldn't get vaccinated. I'm saying that the governmental mandates that are sure to follow this, and they will come, are utterly out of line with both the science and with basic human decency. Here is Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Talking about kids ages 5 to 11, and that's something that will be considered very soon, and perhaps given an emergency use authorization very soon. How concerned are you that parents are going to stand in the way of children getting these vaccines?
Well, I hope not. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure that we outreach to the parents with trusted messages, particularly some of the most trusted messages are the family pediatrician, who most parents have a good deal of confidence in. And we're trying to get people to realize it is for the benefit of the children as well as for the entire family unit to get the child vaccinated. The vaccinations and the vaccines in question are highly, highly effective and safe. So there's really no reason not to.
Okay, I mean, a few reasons not to are that kids are basically safe from hospitalization and death from COVID without the vaccine. We have no longitudinal data. The entire study sample size was about 2,300 kids. Myocarditis only appears in 1 in 9,000 kids. So the sample size isn't even big enough for you to determine what the alternative symptoms are. We don't, again, it's one thing to risk the possible downstream for people who have a higher level of risk of hospitalization or death. When you're talking about kids, most of whom are asymptomatic, you have to make a pretty strong case as to why kids should get vaccinated. And the case that they might infect adults, I'm sorry, this is endemic. This is endemic now. It is, in fact, probably more likely that adults are going to infect kids. Most of the outbreaks that we've seen in schools are coming from teachers to the kids, not the other way around. Okay, but Anthony Fauci has to push this. And so he's also been pushing the notion that, for example, the spike that we are seeing in Britain right now is due to kids, right? So he said this, quote, "What they are seeing is spread among children, which for the most part, at least 50% is without symptoms. But children are then spreading it to members of the family. So they're seeing people get infected. So right now, they're re-examining what their policy is going to be about vaccinating children, right? So he's blaming a current UK spike on the unvaccinated kids, except for the fact that the people who are being hospitalized and dying are unvaccinated adults and or vaccinated adults who had the vaccines a long time ago and happen to be old. Right? That's where the real danger lies. But instead of focusing on the adults, we're going to go after the kids. Why you would trust these people, I just don't understand. I really don't understand what they have done to earn your trust. So if you talk to your family pediatrician, and your family pediatrician recommends the shots, listen to your family pediatrician. But why you would trust Anthony Fauci on a blanket level here is beyond me. And why you would trust political actors is really beyond me. See, if Jerry Nadler, for example, yesterday in the House, they were having some sort of committee meeting, and Jerry Nadler starts calling out the Republicans who are not masking on the committee.
I would remind all members that guidance from the Office of Attending Physicians states that face coverings are required for all meetings in an enclosed space, such as committee hearings, except when you are recognized to speak. And that means you, Jim, and Marjorie, and Matt, and a lot of other people I can't recognize because of distance, etc. So please, everyone, observe that rule.
Okay, my favorite part of this is that literally half of the room is unmasked. Literally half the room. Also, I don't know why the rule is that you get to unmask when you speak. If we're going to be scientifically proper about this, when you're speaking is when you should wear the mask. That's when you're expelling spit. It's when you're aerosolizing the virus. But this is all political. It's all political, and it drives me up a damn wall. There is no consistency coming from the CDC. There's no consistency coming from the FDA. There's no consistency in what they hope is the pathway forward from the
excuses
pandemic.
to stall
Because we all know
time.
at this point it's endemic. The only thing you can do if you're concerned is vaccinate yourself. If you're concerned for your child, go ahead and vaccinate your kid. And if you're not, don't. And that's the end of this. We are done. But
All
not
we're
according to our
doing
public officials
is
who
stalling
maintain control.
time.
They're in their sclerotic, pathetic hands. The more control you choose to give to moron politicians, the more control you choose to give to overarching authoritarian bureaucrats, the more you deserve to be controlled. And if you believe that they can save you from disease, or save you from poverty, or save you from the vicissitudes of life, you are out of your damned mind. You're crazy. The only thing that can save you from these things is good individual decision making, which is why I've encouraged individuals to get vaccines if they're in any way vulnerable. And it's also why I say that you need to perform individual risk assessment, because when you allow everybody else to control your life, it is worse for you and it is worse for everybody else.